Fraud in herbs and botanicals. Herbs, when grouped with spices, are among the top 10 most fraud-affected food types, while dietary supplements, which often contain herbal ingredients, are also in the top 10. Food authenticity experts differentiate between herbs used for cooking, called culinary herbs, and herbs used in herbal medicine preparations, often called botanicals. What are herbs exactly? They're pieces of plants that, in the case of culinary herbs, impart organoleptic properties to food, and for botanicals have properties that are valuable in traditional medicine. Certain plant materials, such as turmeric, could be considered both a herb and a botanical, although many of us would actually consider it a spice rather than a herb. The World Trade Organization's definition of herbs includes powdered seeds and bark, meaning materials such as cardamom and cinnamon count as herbs, as well as spices. Confusing. And I'll read a quote from the World Trade Organization's definition. Herbs are crude plant material such as leaves, flowers, fruit, seed, stems, wood, bark, roots, rhizomes, or other plant parts which may be entire, fragmented, or powdered. And the definition of a botanical is a substance obtained from a plant and used typically in medicinal or cosmetic products. Why so vulnerable? Dried herbs and botanicals are particularly vulnerable to food fraud for 3 reasons. They are high-value materials, so fraudsters can make significant financial gains by diluting, adulterating, or misrepresenting them. They have complex and long supply chains, passing through many different hands and with many different points where they can be adulterated or misrepresented. They often have a physical form, powder or flowable pieces, suitable for dilution with fillers or adulteration with enhancements such as dyes or pigments. What does fraud in herbs and botanicals look like? In herbs and botanicals, fraud can take the form of adulteration or dilution with other plant material. For example, adding olive leaves to dried oregano or sage. Adulteration of botanicals with food dyes. For example, St. John's wort extracts adulterated with amaranth, brilliant blue, sunset yellow, and tartrazine. And what I'm reading out here in the email and the post is actually hyperlinked to real cases that fit with those examples. Adulteration of natural herbal supplements with pharmaceutical drugs such as sildenafil, that's Viagra. Another example is substitution of plant species, for example, tejocote root replaced with toxic oleander. And finally, misrepresentation of country of origin or organic status. Oregano, a vulnerable culinary herb. Fraud in oregano has been reported for years. Stakeholders in the United Kingdom's review of methods for herb and spice authenticity named it the herb or spice of most concern, followed by black pepper. In 2022, testing of oregano from Turkey revealed 1/4 of samples contained olive leaves, with 2 samples containing no oregano at all. In 2021, 48%, that's almost half, of nearly 300 oregano samples were deemed suspicious in a set of tests by the European Commission's Knowledge Centre for Food Fraud and Quality. Olive leaves were the most common adulterant. In 2022, surveillance sampling in the United Kingdom revealed adulteration with leaves other than oregano, and again, mostly olive leaves, at concentrations of up to 25% in 13% of samples. And oregano supplies in Norway, the USA, and Australia have also been affected by adulteration with non-oregano leaves. In the email and the post, I've got an image which was used by Professor Chris Elliott in a webinar about herb and spice fraud, and it shows some containers of oregano, like dried oregano leaf pieces, next to containers of olive leaf pieces and myrtle leaf pieces, and they're really difficult to visually differentiate. While researching this post, I learned that olive leaves used as adulterants in oregano often have high levels of pesticide residues. Of course, since olive leaves aren't grown for human food, the pesticides aren't approved for food use and aren't safe. This means that oregano adulterated with olive leaves presents a safety risk to consumers. And by the way, did you know culinary herb supply chains are less vulnerable to climate change than other plant foods because they generally grow quite quickly and crops can easily be established in new growing areas as climate patterns change. Vulnerable botanicals. 20 suspicious botanicals and fungi have been listed by an analytic lab, Alchemist, in the hope that this will make it harder for cheaters to cheat. These are the materials that have most frequently failed identity testing, and one presumes that is Alchemist testing, during the first half of 2024. The list includes herbal supplement ingredients such as echinacea, reishi, elderberry, nettle, and ashwagandha, domesticated or common apple, lemon balm, watercress, olive, monk fruit, stevia, and grape. Elderberry, Sambucus nigra, is a repeat offender, having had the most testing failures in 2023. And apple, Malus pumila, is a new and unexpected addition to the list. Alchemist didn't publish information about the form of the listed items, so we don't know if they were powders or liquid extracts or dried pieces. The test methods used were HPTLC, that's high performance thin layer chromatography, and the test methods were based on HPTLC. Advice from the Botanicals Lab. To minimise exposure to fraud in botanicals, Alchemist recommends supplement businesses should take care with the selection of suppliers, make sure purchasing specifications are rigorous when it comes to both identity and quality, test every delivery of every lot, scrutinise contract manufacturers in detail, requesting copies of all test reports and periodically checking products in a third-party lab. And finally, when failures happen, Alchemist urges businesses to do the right thing. Authenticity testing has no silver bullet. No one testing approach will work for all herbs, and a wide range of test methods are being used in industry. These various methods are commonly based on spectroscopy, mass spectroscopy, and DNA methods. Purchasers of culinary herbs are beginning to adopt a two-tiered testing approach to testing. Two-tiered testing involves an initial screening test, usually spectroscopic, that can be done quickly in-house and will flag potentially problematic samples. Any problematic samples from the screening are then sent away to an outside laboratory for more in-depth authenticity testing. Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, so that's FTIR, and near-infrared spectroscopy, NIR, methods are the most common screening methods used in the United Kingdom. And at the end of that post, I've got a section called Sources and Further Reading, where I've listed the sources for everything that I said just there, and have also included some links to the American Botanical Council's Botanical Adulterants Prevention Program, which has got a bunch of resources about adulteration prevention in botanicals. And by the way, if you are enjoying this from the Rotten Apple, it's a reader-supported publication, so I do encourage you to think about doing a paid subscription because that will support this ad-free and independent information.